Welcome back to MTG Mountain Talk series New to Standard. This video is part of the mini-series Breaking Down the Cards. In this lesson, we'll talk about what a permanent is and discuss creature cards. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to catch our latest videos and get a well-rounded introduction to the different card types. In Magic the Gathering, there are several different card types: instants, sorceries, creatures, enchantments, artifacts, planeswalkers, and lands. Of these card types, creatures, enchantments, artifacts, planeswalkers, and lands, as well as tokens, are permanents, which means that they reside on the battlefield. Instants and sorceries are not permanents, as they are cast for short-term effects. Emblems are also not considered permanents, and like tokens, they are not technically considered cards, as cards reside in the library. In Magic, cards can have supertypes, such as basic or legendary, as well as a variety of subtypes. According to rules containing to legendary cards, you can only have one copy of a permanent with the legendary supertype of the same name residing on the battlefield at the same time, and this includes legendaries among creatures, lands, artifacts, enchantments, and planeswalkers. Note that not all planeswalkers are technically considered legendary, but the legendary rule does apply to all planeswalkers. As an example, you can only have one copy of Chandra Torch of Defiance on the battlefield at a time, even though she's technically not legendary. But you can also have a copy of Chandra Bolt Pyromancer on the battlefield at the same time, even though she is legendary, since they don't share the same full name. Additionally, a new legendary spell type, Legendary Sorceries, were introduced in Dominaria, which enchantments can cast a legendary sorcery if you control a planeswalker or a legendary creature. However, since legendaries are not permanents, you can cast more than one legendary sorcery in a single turn. Subtypes of cards will vary based on the card type. Enchantments can have the subtypes such as Saga or Aura, where artifacts are going to have subtypes like creature or equipment. Creatures can have a wide assortment of subtypes, and creatures can actually belong to many different subtypes at the same time. As an example, Siren Storm Tamer is a Siren Pirate Wizard. This means that any spell that has effects related to sirens, pirates, or wizards will each apply to Siren Storm Tamer. Therefore, if you cast Daring Buccaneer, which requires that you reveal a pirate card from your hand as part of the casting cost, you could reveal Siren Storm Tamer. Additionally, if you control Siren Storm Tamer when you go to cast Wizard's Lightning, that spell will actually only cost 1 red mana, since Siren Storm Tamer is also a wizard. So let's talk about creatures. Creatures are very diverse in MTG, but creatures have two general purposes in the game. First, they can attack for you in an attempt to reduce your opponent's life total. Second, they can block for you to protect your life total from your opponent's attacks. But those are just two of the most basic purposes. Creatures also have a wide assortment of abilities that can dramatically alter the game. First, we will discuss the components of a creature spell. When you look at a creature card or spell, there are 5 key parts to pay attention to: the casting cost, the color of the creature type, the power and toughness of the creature, and the creature's abilities. The casting cost of the creature is usually noted in the upper right corner of the card. The casting cost is how much mana is needed to cast the creature, a combination of numbers and colored symbols. Numbers represent the amount of mana of any color or colorless mana needed to cast the card, and the colors represent the number of each specific mana color needed to cast the spell. Some cards, like Gulta Primal Hunger, have special abilities that can alter the mana cost to cast the spell, and permanents in the battlefield, like Ronus' Monument, may also alter this cost. When deciding what cards to use in your deck, it is important to consider the mana cost of your creatures. Generally, a deck with a lot of creatures, such as an aggro deck, will include mostly creatures that cost a total of 1, 2, or 3 mana, and only have a few creatures that cost 4 or more mana to cast. However, a control deck that favors counter and removal spells that prevent your opponent from playing cards and removes his or her creatures from play may only have a few larger creatures that are played later in the game to finish off their opponent. The color or colors of the symbols in the mana cost represent the color of the creature. It is important to know the color of creatures, and other permanents you or your opponents control can have some card effects that do rely on color. As an example, the Knight of Malice has a greater power if there are white permanents on the battlefield, and it has hexproof from white spells and abilities, meaning that he cannot be targeted by any spell or ability with at least one white mana cost in the casting cost. Additionally, spells like Chandra's Defeat can only target red creatures and planeswalkers. Because the Knight of Malice is black, it cannot be the target of Chandra's Defeat. However, a creature like Direfleet Neckbreaker is both black and red and can be killed by Chandra's Defeat. The creature type is usually listed in the thin bar of text under the picture of the creature and generally follows the word creature. It is important to note that cards such as Traxos, Scourge of the Cross are creatures, so creature is a subtype after artifact. These artifacts are affected by spells that target both creatures and artifacts. A creature's subtype is generally only important for spells that specify by type. As an example, Legion Lieutenant, a vampire knight, specifies that other vampires you control get +1/+1. So a creature like Sadistic Skymarcher, a vampire soldier, would get +1/+1, while a creature like Aerial Responder, a dwarf soldier, would not. However, if you cast a card like Radiant Destiny and use the creature type Soldier, both Sadistic Skymarcher and Aerial Responder would get +1/+1, while Legion Lieutenant would not. These types of effects are important when considering having a tribal theme for your deck build. If you want cards like Radiant Destiny to work in your deck, you want to use cards with at least one common creature subtype that can be named. Because Radiant Destiny is a white card, popular tribes or creature types currently in Standard that would work well with it back at humans, among others. Power and toughness are arguably the most important considerations when choosing your curse. These are located in the lower right corner of the card, with the power coming before the toughness. Let's look back at Aerial Responder, and we can see that he is a 2/3 creature, meaning that he has a power of 2 and a toughness of 3. Power is the amount of damage that a creature can do to its target, either to another creature, a planeswalker, or an opposing player. Toughness is the amount of damage needed to kill a creature. Let's say that Aerial Responder and Sadistic Skymarcher face off. Damage is dealt at the same time, but Sadistic Skymarcher has a power of 2 and a toughness of 2. When damage is dealt, Aerial Responder will do 2 damage to Skymarcher, killing him, as he can take just 2 damage. When Sadistic Skymarcher deals his 2 damage to Aerial Responder, there will still be 1 toughness left over, so Aerial Responder survives. However, if Legion Lieutenant is in the battlefield with Sadistic Skymarcher, Skymarcher will actually have a power of 3 and a toughness of 3, and this means he would kill Aerial Responder and survive the round of combat. There is a term in MTG that is important to consider when determining attacks and blocks in combat called First Strike. While damage is generally dealt at the same time by opposing creatures, creatures with First Strike will actually deal their damage first. If that damage would be enough to kill the other creature doesn't even live long enough to assign damage at all. As an example, Danitha Capuchin Paragon is a 2/2 creature with First Strike. If Sadistic Skymarcher blocks Danitha without Legion Lieutenant on the battlefield, Skymarcher is just a 2/2. Because Danitha has First Strike, she will deal 2 damage to Skymarcher first, killing him, so he cannot even deal his 2 damage to Danitha, and she lives. In the case of creatures with First Strike, your creature's any damage can be done to them. So if Radiant Destiny or Legion Lieutenant are pumping Sadistic Skymarcher, he would live and kill Danitha. Lastly, but certainly not least important, is to look at a creature's abilities, indicated in the box of text below the creature type. In most standard decks, you will not find a single creature that doesn't have 1 or more abilities that can impact the game. Notice that Sadistic Skymarcher and Aerial Responder have Flying and Lifelink. Flying means that these creatures attack in the air. Only creatures with Flying and Reach can block flying creatures, giving them an attack advantage. Lifelink means that their controller gains life equal to the amount of damage assigned to any target during attacking, blocking, and even fighting. If I attack with Aerial Responder and my opponent blocks with Sadistic Skymarcher, we both gain 2 life, even though Sadistic Skymarcher will die. However, if I attack with Danitha, who also has lifelink, and my opponent blocks with Sadistic Skymarcher, remember that Skymarcher actually dies before he can deal damage to Danitha. So because Danitha deals 2 damage, I gain 2 life, but Skymarcher's controller does not gain life, since it did no damage. Notice that Danitha also has several other abilities besides First Strike and lifelink. Vigilance means that she does not have to tap to attack. As you'll see in our video related to taking a turn, creatures have to tap when they enter combat, which is indicated by turning the creature to its right side. Creatures that are tapped cannot be used to block on the opponent's turn. So the real advantage of creatures with Vigilance is that they can attack on their controller's turn and then block during their opponent's combat phase. Furthermore, Danitha states that aura and equipment spells cost 1 less to cast. So in addition to having some great abilities as a creature, she also has an ability that contributes to other parts of the game, specifically to casting certain spell types. The more experience that you have with creatures, the more you will see that the power, toughness, and other abilities of a creature are usually related to the casting cost. Ironically, we have used some examples here that have a few more abilities than expected for their cost, and that's how you know that Danitha in particular is a really good card, especially if you're interested in using aura enchantments and artifact equipment in your deck. When it comes to creatures, find creatures that are fun to play with, that you really like, and try building a deck for them to work, or find room for them in a deck that you really like to play. Then just start playing. A lot. You will find that there are a lot of interesting interactions with different creatures and even other spells in your deck that you may not have noticed until you've played a few times and made them happen. For this lesson's card spotlight, we have Carnage Tyrant from the Ixalan set. Carnage Tyrant is among the best creatures in Standard right now, especially with how powerful the white and blue control decks are, where the strategy is to counter and remove the opponent's creatures. What's really great about Carnage Tyrant is that there are really no answers for allowing it to enter the battlefield, because one of the abilities states that Carnage Tyrant cannot be countered. Then, once it's on the battlefield, few cards can deal with Carnage Tyrant because of the hexproof ability. Remember that hexproof means that a card cannot be the target of spells or abilities. In addition to being an awesome card with hexproof and not being able to be countered, Carnage Tyrant is a 7/6 creature with trample for just 4 colorless and 2 green mana. With a converted mana cost of just 6, this card is really great. Similar cards like Primordial Worm cost the same amount of mana for the same prevent the abilities of Carnage Tyrant. Because Carnage Tyrant has a power of 7 and trample, your opponents will generally have to block with multiple creatures to prevent taking damage. Remember that trample means that any damage not blocked by creatures carries over to an opponent being attacked. Be careful though. With a toughness of 6, opponents may need just a few creatures or an instant speed pump spell to block and kill your Carnage Tyrant. Aside from damage dealt by creatures, there are a few spells to look out for when you're playing Carnage Tyrant. Among the black spells, Bontu's Last Reckoning is a sorcery that will destroy all creatures for just 1 colorless and 2 black mana. Among the white spells, Settle the Wreckage is an instant spell for 2 colorless and 2 white mana that exiles all attacking creatures target opponent controls. So unless you are hexproof, Carnage Tyrant will die. And Fumigate is a sorcery spell for 3 colorless and 2 white that also destroys all creatures. Among red, there are several removal spells, including Planeswalkers that do damage to each creature or each creature an opponent controls, such as a combination of Hour of Devastation that deals 5 damage to all creatures and Blazing Volley, which deals 1 creature to all of an opponent's creatures. A few cards that can help you protect from these threats are Heroic Intervention, an instant spell for 1 colorless and 1 green, which makes your creatures indestructible. But notice that Hour of Devastation removes this ability. But we also have Shalai, Voice of Plenty, a white 3/4 flying creature that gives you, your creatures, and your planeswalkers hexproof. However, Shalai does not protect herself, so for a white and green deck, you would really need cards like Blossoming Defense, Heroic Intervention, and Adamant Will to protect her. Alternate blue to use cards like Negate and Disallow to counter spells that would otherwise exile or destroy Carnage Tyrant. Well, that's all for this video, and we hope to see you on our Facebook community, MTG Mountain Talk New to Standard, with a group URL of MTG New to Standard, and you can get the full URL in the description below. This is a new community, so please feel free to invite your friends to join in the fun. To get quick access to new videos, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like any videos that you find helpful. We hope to be posting new videos each month in the New to Standard series to help you on your journey to becoming an MTG master. You can also get sneak peeks and refer back to all of our training material even before the videos are finalized and published, including scripts and images at our blog, www.mtgnewtostandard.com.